Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Passion from Pain. And as you all know, my name is Amy Pease, the founder of Passion from Pain and creator of Finding Strength After Toxicity, the really super awesome platform where we discover ourselves again and our strength and courage to find ourselves again after leaving toxic abuse, mental abuse, or any kind of trauma in our lives. And today we've got an awesome guest, Miss Nikki Neal from the Soul Shifter Revolution. She's here today to talk to us about all kinds of things. We had a really awesome conversation. I really love the community that she's built on unity, built on rebuilding women, uplifting women after abuse, after hard times, after troubling pasts. And I am so happy to have you here. Welcome, Nikki, to the show. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and so happy, that we connected.
Yeah, for sure. I was so excited when you reached out to me on Facebook and I got to take a look at your profile. And you've got some really awesome things going on. So why don't you let everybody know kind of what you do and all that fun stuff?
Sure, I'd love to. So basically I'd say like 6 years ago, I really started to um just start to gain some awareness. I think I woke up one day and kind of was looking at my life going, okay, I've always been the good girl. Like I've always done the right things. I was the first one in my family to go to college. And, once I had my daughter, it was like I got married and I had a career in teaching. And I just woke up one day going, I am not happy with this life. Like I know that I deserve more and I want more. And I think when I realized that I was in like a toxic, abusive, like narcissistic type of marriage, and I decided to walk away from that, I really thought that that was going to be like my new beginning. And it really was like this 5 year journey of not only moving through the divorce, but just like this whole self discovery journey and really learning that, so many empathic people attract narcissistic relationships and really like diving into that and why that happens and with my teaching background I feel like I really not only was learning things and experiencing things and moving through things but um, as I started moving away from teaching and doing Reiki and different things, I started recognizing like, wow, a lot of people have been through similar things that I've been through. And if I can help people kind of move through things the way that I did, or, how I saw things, then, maybe I can help, people. And I feel like I started doing that. And, one of the reasons why I created the community was because, I really just realized that we need more support. Like we need community. And a one and done session is like really not enough for people, especially when you're providing energy work. It's like you're really helping people move through things. And so what I noticed is like, okay, my clients need more support. We're actually mirroring a lot of the same wounds, even though it might be showing up in our life in like different ways. And I was kind of experiencing something different because, yes, I love working with women and attracting a lot of women, but I was also attracting men into my community and things like that. And so I was like, well, I don't really want to like shun the men away if
Right, right.
like if they feel like this is a safe place. And so I created one of the workshops that I created in my community was I had this whole framework of like death of the good girl and really, why we take on that characteristic or that role. But I had to change the title to death of the nice one because I realized that there were, masculine energy within my community that were also experiencing or mirroring that type of, wound or experiencing that in their life. And so I think that moving through my own trauma and healing my own stuff, not only did I um, really discover that I had a lot more going on than like I realized, because I've always been like a strong, independent person. So it's always just been like, keep going. And, you have things to do. And as my healing journey kind of unfolded, it was like almost the universe like putting me in timeout and not allowing me to do anything but really like look at myself and move through things. And one of the things that, I love to do is kind of take what I went through and that long experience and the pain of everything that I went through, and then create something out of that pain and really trying to help other people get from point A to point B a lot faster, than I had to move through it. And so that's kind of what really birth the soul shifter revolution, because like the teacher in me was like, oh my gosh, I have to give people like this knowledge, this help, like this. And then I'm also like, okay, people also need community, and I needed community when I was going through my healing journey. And so I'm like, okay, what did I need, what kind of leader did I need? And trying to show up as her, right, and trying to do that from my community, because um I feel like soul work is really slow work. And if you get lost in it, um, it can be very overwhelming if you don't really have, awareness or support or a guide or anything like that. And so there's just like this really unlearning a lot of things that we were taught and relearning more about yourself. And that's kind of the journey that I went on, and the journey that I kind of help my clients through. And when I'm creating, I create like different journals and different tools and things like that to really help people um, with that kind of resource or knowledge or whatever it is, to really help them, move through things. Cause I just feel, like I see the power that it did for me and how I like
Right.
healed myself from all these things. And I'm like, okay, I really need to help people and like share what I've been doing, because, I feel a lot better.
Right, right. I love it. I love it because, and it's so true because anybody who has gone through this kind of transformation, whether you've been through an abusive past or not, you've gone through this transformation where you've had to heal from something, right? You come out on the other end, and it's kind of like that light bulb kind of goes off for you, and it all clicks. And that's when you kind of know, okay, I've made it to the other end of this. I've made it through that dark tunnel. Here I am on the other end. And now the only thing you want to do is you want to shout down at the other end of the tunnel and say, hey everybody, just keep coming, just keep coming.
Mhm.
And you want to help pull them through and help direct them through, because we get on these healing journeys. We think, okay, I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna fix myself, or whatever is going on with me. And what happens so many times is life ends up kicking our ass one way
Mhm.
or another. And or just the feelings from the healing journey ends up really bringing us down even further than we were before, because we're coming to truths, we're coming to realizations that we don't want to face. We buried all of that a long time ago, and for a reason, right? So we don't want to think
Mhm.
about it. So when it starts coming up again, it starts to hurt really bad again,
Mhm.
almost as if we're going through the situation again, even though we're not, right? So we end up veering off again, putting it away again, turning to, cheap escapes, drugs, alcohol, whatever, to suppress those kind of feelings. And so it's so important to be able to have somebody like yourself to say, no, this is okay. Let's work through this. There's other ways to deal with it than pushing it aside again because, that didn't work for you before, because here we are now after having pushed it aside for so long,
Mhm.
and don't want to go the other route, the addiction route, right? So no, you need somebody that's going to help guide you and help keep you on course, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen on the journey, 100% guaranteed. You're going to veer off course somewhere, somehow.
Mhm.
Something's going to happen. And so, I love what you're doing, and helping to bring people and keep them on course, and kind of keep their head straight through it, because it is a tough journey. It can be hell for most people who go on a journey like this, for sure. I mean, they're
Mhm.
facing some demons sometimes.
100%. 100%. I think
And go ahead.
I was
No,
just
go
going
ahead.
to say that, I think so many times too, when we're going through our journey, we feel so isolated and alone, and, like I'm the only one going through this, or, and feeling those feelings, right? I always like talk to my clients about how we're kind of like energetic suitcases. And so it's like we can only hold so much. And in order to really have the things that, we desire, we have to unpack our suitcase and we have to make space and make room for the things that we really want. And I don't think that, we were taught like as a collective how much or how impactful our emotions really are, and when we
Right.
hold on to them, like how dangerous that really is. And a lot of times, I'll hear my clients say like, oh, I went through that as a child or something, but that doesn't bother me anymore. And then you'll see it come up, their body will feel triggered, and I'm like, okay, I know you think that it's not bothering you anymore, but your
Right.
body is remembering, and it's trying to communicate with you and show you through the triggers, through your emotions. And I love like what you said about like shadow work. And because I think early on I always really understood that like our greatest gifts lie in our shadows. And so I was always like, okay, what can I do? Like, what can I find in there? Like, you know what I mean? And I didn't
Right.
realize how much was in there when I opened that can of worms.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like, through the divorce and through the experience, it really helped me. Like, and what I realized about narcissism really is that, they just really want to create chaos. So the more that you can lean into peace and create more peace in your life, and also like that journey of self-worth and creating healthy boundaries. And so it was like through him, I was able to see myself and say, you know what, I deserve better than this. I'm not going to tolerate this. Like, and so it helped me, feel and empower myself to be, who I am today too. And so I think that that was like a big part of my journey because, when I was, working one-on-one with clients, I was attracting a lot of people who, whether they were man or woman, they were in narcissistic relationships. And it's like, okay, this is actually a good thing. Like, I know it feels really bad, but you're actually like finding yourself. You're actually like choosing, what you will and will not tolerate, what is acceptable, because you're starting this whole like journey of self-love, right? And I think
Hmm.
that especially as women, we're not really taught that. We're really taught to be like the good girl and to be nice and to, like don't say too much because like you're too much or you're too dramatic or you
Yep.
feel too much, and it's like all the opposite things that it's like whatever we've been taught, we
Yep.
really need to be doing the opposite. And
Yep.
so it's like really breaking through, I think, those boxes, those stigmas, those perceptions on like how we've been taught and things about even like mental illness. It's like,
Hmm.
everyone is like, oh, people with like ADHD or different things like that. And it's like, I truly believe that we're just more sensitive to energy and we just haven't really been taught those things. So we don't know how to manage that. And now we're like consuming, right, all this extra
Hmm.
energy and not realizing like, oh, I actually have like Debbie, Sue, Paul, G, and all these people's energy attached to mine because
Yeah.
I'm not even really sure what my energy feels like, right? And
Yep.
so really teaching people that like journey back home and like, hey, this is what your essence feels like. And this is how you can kind of determine, who is actually in alignment for you and who isn't by how people make you feel and how they alter, right, your essence. Like, are they pouring into your cup and making you feel really good? Or are they draining your cup and, really taking from you? And I think being so empathic, I really had to start to look at people, especially the people that I love the most, as energy and kind of say, like, okay, how do I feel around them? What is my energy like? And really start to kind of zoom back because those relationships were the relationships that were really keeping me feeling like overwhelmed and in quicksand. And so I really had to learn how to separate myself, but it was hard because I'm like such a loving, like, no, I'm going to make this work. Like,
It's a
I'm
difficult
going to
thing
forgive
for an
them,
empath.
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
absolutely a difficult thing because you don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings through this process either, because it ends up making you feel guilty or shameful
mhm,
because you've made somebody else feel bad, regardless of the energy that they bring to your life. And so you do have that internal conflict,
mhm,
within yourself because you don't want to create that in somebody else because you know how it feels because you're empathetic to how that feels for somebody else. And so I
Mhm.
think that's the one of the biggest lessons that empaths really need to learn is being able to put up those boundaries like that and being able to uphold them, without feeling the guilt and the shame. And that takes a lot of practice. And that's where, doing this kind of work really, really helps, and seeking the help out, and really knowing yourself too, you
Mhm.
know, for sure. And that's a big part of the healing process too, is discovering who you are, or relearning, and a lot of people didn't even know who they were before the abuse
Mhm.
happened, and so that's typically why, we end up falling for it, is because we didn't know who we were. We
Mhm.
didn't know what we wanted, and we just kind of went with the flow most of the time.
Yeah. And I think too that like moth to a flame, I feel
Yeah.
like, we kind of stick out like prey, right? And it's so
Oh
easy
yeah.
for predators to find people like us because our light is so bright that it's like, oh, there they are, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm gonna
Yeah.
and so they know, I think too, like what our wounds are and how to manipulate us to stay connected. And I
Oh,
think that, learning more about energy and more about myself, like that's why
okay.
for me like digging into my birth chart and really like understanding my energy was so important, because I feel like growing up, like people either loved me or hated me. And I never really like understood why, because I'm like, I'm such a kind person. Like, I don't understand like why people don't like me. And when I dug into my birth chart, I was like, oh, my rising sign is a Scorpio. Like, okay, when people meet me, that's what energy they're receiving. So it's either like people are inspired by me or intimidated by me. And I never understood, why, but
Right.
once I was like digging in, I'm like, oh, this is why. And I think just like being empathic and just always kind of connecting things back to energy, I really started to use, my birth chart to not only help me, but to like help my clients, or to like understand the energy of my clients. So like when my clients came in, I'm like, hey, do you know your sun's sign? And then I would start like giving them like, facts about themselves. And they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, this is like what your energy is telling me about you. And, it's only a small piece of kind of, what that is. And so I feel like too, on my journey, it was so isolating that being able to use my birth chart kind of to go back as like confirmation of like, okay, you are on the right path, you are doing the right thing. And even though the external world is like really messy and it looks like everything is not working out, it's like I
Mhm.
know that I'm on the right path and I'm doing the right thing. And so when I kind of zoomed out and was looking at, my healing journey and kind of that framework kind of that I work with my clients, I really started to realize like, wow, I kind of developed like this wham framework. And the W stands for whole body wellness. So when I talk about healing or just like the body in general, I'm looking at like the four aspects of the body: the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical body. And then the H is for healing. So, I talk about how, everything in our present life is really going to help give us information about what it is that we need to heal, and bringing up that awareness, because it's like anywhere in life where we're feeling uncomfortable, that's usually where, we're blocking ourselves and where we're trying to get our attention. And then the A is for authenticity. So I really started to look at my birth chart, look at my human design, really start to try to like understand myself on a deeper level, because when I think about spirituality, I just think about it's like a deeper relationship with self and like a journey back home, because I don't think about it as like a type of religion or anything like that. And then the M is for mindset. And so a big part of my journey was reprogramming like the beliefs that I thought or that I was taught or society has kind of imprinted on me, and saying to myself, well, I don't think money is the root of all evil. You know what I mean? Because if like I had a lot of money, I know what I would do, like really great things with it. Like, you know what I mean? And so I
Yep.
started like really getting curious and like questioning things. And I
Mhm.
think that that's how I really started and just like that awareness too of like noticing like, oh, there goes that negative self-talk, and then I would like stop in the moment and I would really start to just like go off on a tangent of like positive affirmations and just like totally shift the story that I was telling myself. And so that's kind of what birth like talk that talk sis, of really helping people get into their feminine energy, and using affirmations along with like the energy of each day of the week to kind of amplify the affirmation of that day, using energy kind of like that, and using that process to kind of reprogram the subconscious mind, which also, affirmations are a great way to heal the solar plexus. And so when I started really diving into energy and like realizing like, oh wow, we can actually connect like physical ailments and different illnesses back to the energetic body,
Yep.
and then we can use like that whole body approach to dive in and heal. And so I really believe like wholeheartedly that, we can heal from anything. We just have to kind of have the awareness and the tools and the knowledge and the resources to have that full body approach. So yeah, we're going to do the things physically that we know we have to do, but we're also going to ask ourselves like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually what that block looks like and what it's and so with talk that talk sis, I realized I'm like, wow, like women or feminine energy has really been suppressed for a long time. And so when we look at, a lot of women, we see a lot of women with gut health issues, whether it's IBS
Oh
or,
yeah.
you know, um, things like that. And then I'm like, oh wow, well that's the solar plexus, and that's when it's blocked when we're feeling powerless. Well, of course we're feeling powerless because we've been suppressed for a really long time as a collective. So like my wheels are turning and I'm like, okay, I really need to create something, not only because like I know that it helped me, but like I also know that this is like really powerful because of the energy and the intention behind it. And so I'm like, I really need to help people with this and I really need to share. And so I just have always had this like deep desire from a little girl of like, oh, I want to save the world. And like, I never understood, why people just can't all get along. Like, it just like always baffled me as a child. Like, I don't understand it.
Right.
Um, but now that I'm here, I'm like, I know why I always felt that way.
Right. Right.
Like, I think I'm
That's
onto
awesome.
something.
Right. There you go. There you go. And that's why you're here and why you're doing all of this now. And it's interesting, you brought up the physical symptoms that kind of come along with it, and usually that typically ends up being like your body really screaming at you that there is something wrong when you are just not listening, or you're at that point where you have suppressed like your intuition, your soul, that inner voice. You've suppressed it so long, you just can't even hear it anymore. And so
Mhm,
your body has no other choice but to start presenting those kind of feelings in another way, which ends up being these physical symptoms. And yeah, IBS being a huge one, or gut issues for women, and that was one of the things that I ended up going through as well. And I had no idea. I thought it was just, I was eating too much crap food, probably was part of it,
mhm,
because I was working too much. But, I realized even when I changed my diet, it still didn't go away. And
mhm,
so it took going through my journey, and then, oh my goodness, I'm starting to feel better. Why is that going away all of a sudden
mhm.
after I'm fixing my mind and now my stomach? What? This makes no
Yeah.
sense. But it makes perfect sense now that, I've been through it. I've done the research on it, and yeah, I know that, it absolutely is all connected to the mind and connected to the soul on the other end of
Mhm,
it too. And I think sometimes too people kind of forget or miss that soul connection in the healing process too, and it's probably the biggest part of it.
mhm,
And so if you're not addressing that soul and that spiritual side of yourself, you're not going to get very far down the path. And so, whether you go into astrology or, you're a religious type of person, whatever that is, you have to, address that soul. We have it, it's
mhm,
there. And if the soul is sick or you're not listening to it, you're not going to get very far in your process, and you're not going to heal. You're not going to get to where you want to be. And so it's one of the biggest things that I like to teach too, is reconnecting with that soul, starting to listen to that soul again, listen to that intuition, listen to that little voice, start letting it know that, hey, I'm starting to understand that you're there again.
Mhm.
Um, and then you'll start to see that, a lot of things are going to start going right in your life again.
Mhm.
Um, when you are following your purpose, or your dream, whatever that is, you're going to start to see that things are just automatically going to start to fall in line like they're supposed to. Life is
Mhm.
going to just kind of start going right. It's weird, but when you are not living in alignment to whatever that purpose is, that's when life starts kicking your butt. That's when the
Mhm.
problems start coming up, the mental issues, the physical sicknesses. That's when that all happens. And so that it's got to all be in alignment with that soul, that spiritual side of yourself. And that's the first thing you really got to start to connect with if you want to go down this journey.
Mhm. I think too, for a lot of us, it's like we've experienced probably trauma in our childhood. And I
Oh,
always talk about, when we've experienced a lot of trauma, we really become disconnected from our bodies because our
yep.
body doesn't feel safe. And so part of the healing journey too is like reconnecting to your physical body, like saying like, hey, it's safe to be here. You can come
Yep.
back, home, and I'm going to protect you, and I'm going to make sure that, I nourish you and give you all the things on all the levels. And I love how you mentioned too that when you started healing the IBS, that yes, you were doing it like physically, but you had that awareness of, something else is kind of going on here. And whenever someone is talking to me about like physical ailments or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, it's because of this. And I'm like, oh, it's deeper than that though. Like you have to peel back the layers, And
Yep.
so it's so funny that, you mentioned that, because I think that we become so um programmed right with that idea of, oh, my body has this, and it's, either nothing I can do, or I can only approach like it physically. I think it's just like that whole shift of mindset of like, oh wow, like you said, my body, I teach this body conscious, and I talk about like how the body always remembers and it stores and it's always communicating. It's like we have to learn how to listen to what our body is saying and what it's communicating and how our body actually works. And then we can have that awareness of being like, oh, okay, I have IBS. Like, let me work on, like feeling more powerful in my life. Like, how can I make moves that empower me and, like you said, help me put myself back into alignment. And so, when we think about like the word dis-ease, like disease, it's like that dis-ease in the body. And so I always talk about like bringing more peace into the body. And I think that, when we think about physical ailments of like things that um, we can maybe heal or not heal, and we think about just, okay, if I actually just added more peace into the body, most people would probably think, like, oh wow, that's crazy, like that's not going to work, but I
Right.
feel like as you actually start to do it, you're like, wow, like you said, like I'm noticing now my body is healing itself, like I don't have these issues, I'm not experiencing those things. And so I just think it's so important. Like I love, when we connected, just having that ability and opportunity to just like put that out there and that awareness out there, and just sharing, your story and my story, and, talking about different things that we've been through. Because I think a lot of times when you go through things, it becomes really dark and really heavy. And I think we feel like we're the only ones that are going through that or experience that. And I think too, I know for me, I was holding so much guilt and shame, which was really like blocking my sacral and my solar plexus, which is like my creativity, my abundance, and also me stepping into and embodying like my personal power. And so I was having like this internal struggle with myself going, okay, like I know these things about myself, or I feel really good when I'm doing these things. So I know that they're in alignment for me. But financially things weren't working out for me. And so like people are like, well, how are you running a business? And you're not. And so it was like that battle, but it was always for me, like, this is way more than a business. Like, this is, um, you know, what wakes me up in the morning and what lights my soul on fire. And I realized that even when I tried to like do normal things, like go get, a normal job to supplement or do different things, it was like the
Right.
universe was like, nope, like this is not
Yep.
happening. Like you thought you had that job, but
Oh
I'm going to
yeah.
pull it away from you. You thought you had this, but I'm going to rip that away. And
Mhm.
so it was like I had to keep going back into asking myself, like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Because like I know that I'm, doing the right thing. And so a lot of what helped me too is like you talked about that deep connection with self. And my guides would tell me like, okay, I yes, we are stripping you from things, like this is helping you, not only like stripping your ego, helping you see like what's important and what's not important, but also like who's on your team and who's not, like
Mhm.
who's treating you, how are people treating you when they think that you have nothing. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's why you're doing that to me, okay. And so it helped me with that like emotional piece of going like, okay, like now I kind of understand why this stuff is happening and I can kind of see things from a higher perspective. So it's painful and the betrayal is there, but it's not as painful. It's not, now I kind of, and now I'm kind of looking at people going, okay, good job. Like you actually did what you were supposed to do because you helped
Mhm.
me move. And like, and
Yeah.
so it was
Yeah.
like this
You're
whole
learning who's
full
going to be there for
circle,
you.
you know?
Yeah, you're
So,
learning who's going to be there for you, and you're learning who is going to try to pull you away from, your
mhm,
dreams and your purpose.
mhm,
You're learning those that are going to say, "Hey, you just need to knock this shit off and go get a job. You need to go get a 9 to 5. You need to
mhm,
just forget all of that nonsense." Those that's what is you're learning in that process is
mhm,
who you need to, shut out,
mhm.
because those are the ones that are going to continue to keep you down, probably because they're down themselves, and they want to hold you down and keep you down
Mhm,
there because misery loves company, right?
mhm. For sure. I was like, I understand. Like, I think that when we hear all these like phrases, we're like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you actually start to go through different experiences,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, hurt people do hurt people. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I definitely, and just realizing that, so many people live on the surface level too.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, like I have a lot of depth. Like, I want to be my best self. Like, I want to try to always I've always been like the type of person on that like self development type of growth type of, and I think that so many people are just happy too with like where they are, that they're like, how dare you come over here and tell me that, like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean, or make me feel like I have more potential than what I'm doing. And so I feel like too, just like understanding like projections and
Yeah.
what like surrendering is and what discernment, like you said, like going through those experiences was actually teaching me discernment, because I had so many people that were like smiling and like, oh, I love you and I
Mhm.
support you, and then like I get around them and I'm like, they don't love and support me, like, you know what I mean, like they're saying something, but their energy and their actions are not backing up,
Mhm.
what they're telling me. And so I think like going through those experiences helped me learn that, okay, even though I want to control things because yes, I need money, I need stability in my life, I'm not delusional, right? Like I know that I need those things, but it was almost like the more that I tried to control it, the harder it was, and the harder it became. So the more I kind of said, okay, I'm just going to wake up every day and do the things that like I'm feeling called to do, or connect with the people that I
Mhm.
feel like I'm going to, and then things like you said just started boom, falling into alignment, falling into a
Yep.
place, things started finally moving, and I'm like, okay. So I think it's just so important just to build community and just like helping each
Mhm.
other and having like that lifeline to say like, oh, okay, today feels a little overwhelming, and for you to go, you know what, don't worry, everything is fine, like,
Yep.
and you're just, oh, okay, that's all I needed, and I just, that little
Right.
recentering, and so I think that that's why, community is so important too, because usually
Mhm.
when you're the one doing the work, it's like you're the only one in your circle, right? Because you're there to kind
Yeah.
of wake everybody else up. And so you're like, wow, like, am I crazy? Like, am I doing, is this
Mhm.
even working? Like, because sometimes it's not working as fast as we want things to,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so then we
Right.
start to really question ourselves, and we're like, okay, am I crazy? Like, am I doing all this work for nothing?
Oh yeah. Oh, I wake up almost every morning thinking that, but
Mhm,
then I'm like, no, no. Just get that out
Yes.
of your head, and strap up your boots and go to your office and go create something, because somebody needs the words that are about to come out of your mouth, even though you
Hmm.
don't know what you're going to say yet. Somebody needs to hear
Exactly.
it. So get over yourself and get in your little studio and create something.
Exactly. And I think that too, like, usually, where we're the most powerful, like, I feel like, your voice is very powerful. And I know, like, my spirit team has been telling me for a very long time, like, your voice is very powerful. But it was like the one thing that was always attacked, like growing up, or
Mhm.
kind of that I made to feel like I need to be quiet. And
Yep.
so, like, I think that overcoming that too, of, like you said, like, just telling myself sometimes to, like, shut up and get out of my own way, like, people need you, and, like, get over yourself, like, I don't care if you're
Yep.
scared or not, like, get up and go do that live, or go,
Yep.
and so for me it was always like, okay, I need a toolbox, like, before I go live, because I'm going to be nervous, like, okay, I need to listen to music, I need to make sure that, like, I get my vibration up, I gotta, like, make sure I'm, doing the thing, saying my prayer, like, setting my intention, and then I'm
Yep.
like, okay, I'm ready to go now. You know what I mean? And so I think
Yep.
too, it's like when we know things about ourselves, that we can start to like prepare for that too, and kind of like help ourselves along the way of giving ourselves kind of like that mothering energy that like maybe we needed growing up, or and so I've
Mhm.
really learned on my journey to kind of like give myself grace, and to try to like give myself that like reparenting or that support that I need. And then I'm like, oh, like I can do that. Like I can do this. Like, you know what I mean? And so I
Exactly.
just think it's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, you got to know who you are, and
Mhm.
you've got to know, how you react, and you've got to know, you just really got to know yourself on a deeper level, and if you don't, it's going to be really difficult. And if you're starting your healing journey and you don't know which direction to go, you start right there. You start
Mhm.
figuring out who you are. And when you've got that piece figured out, the rest of it's going to come a lot easier.
Mhm.
Anytime I get all into my head, depression comes, anxiety comes, I know now what the issue is, and I
Mhm.
know how to look at it, and I know how to fix it, so I don't stay there.
Mhm.
And that's where, ultimately you want to get. You're never going to 100%, you know, not have depression in your life again. You're never going to 100% never have anxiety again. That's just, the human experience. But knowing how you need to deal with that to pull yourself out of that, that is the key to freedom right there.
Mhm.
And that's where you need to start, is discovering who you are, and start with, your astrological sign. That's a great place to start. If you
Mhm.
have no idea where to start right there. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, just learning about your star sign for sure.
I think that it's funny, in my Soul Shifter Revolution community, I just taught a astrology 101 class, because one of the members in there was talking about, I really want to start to learn more about myself, and I kind of heard that
Yeah.
I could do this through my birth chart. Like, can you start teaching more on this? And I'm
Yep.
like, yes. Like, and I always say, like, I am not an expert, because I'm not a full blown astrologer, but I'll always
Mhm,
help you with kind of like what I did for myself and what worked for me. And
mhm,
I feel like, you dig back into. So like I first started out with like, what's my top three? What's my top six?
mhm,
And kind of like understanding that energy. And then I really dug into like what my midhaven was, and what that sign was, and what that
mhm,
element looks like. And really, like understanding like whatever sign your 10th house is in is your midhaven, and that's like where you really excel career wise. So being able to look at that, um my sign is in Virgo, so when I think about my work, like I'm so detail oriented, like I really want to make sure that like I'm giving people like their biggest bang for their buck. So I really have this like whole like approach all the time. And so I think that that's part of, my,
mhm,
and then when I look at my chart, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because that's when I feel the most like,
yeah.
prepared, is when I feel like I know my stuff, and I'm coming from like a place of integrity, not just like, oh, by the way, like I heard about discernment and it looks like this, you know what I mean? And I'm like,
All
no,
right.
actually I was in the trenches of it and this is what it feels
Right.
like. And I think that that's like a really big part of, my journey too, is like that, you know, really, I think we're so programmed of like that final destination that when it takes longer than we think, sometimes it makes us feel like we're doing something wrong. And I really started to realize that like the journey is like where all the magic actually happens, and really
Yes.
learning to be like present and um like loving each and every aspect of myself as I move through that journey, as I'm also like shedding aspects of myself and grieving parts of myself that I'm like, okay, I
Mhm.
love you and I know why you did like the things that you did, but we don't really need to do that anymore, or that's
Yep.
not working for me anymore. So I'm going to let you go, you know? And
Yep.
so it's so weird because there's so many like pieces or things that are involved in healing. And I feel like because a lot of people, um, were kind of taught to do things alone, or like, you know, there was such a stigma to like therapy and things in the
Oh, yeah.
past, that I feel like it's so beautiful to see too, like so many people more open about mental health, or and it's so amazing I think too, because it's like so many people experience it. And even people who are like, I think when people meet me, they think that like I've had a really easy life and I just like, you know, like everything's easy peasy for me, and I'm just like, it's actually quite the opposite. But like I really don't want those things to define me, so I feel like I try to, you know what I mean? And so it's just I think so nice when people actually get to kind of like get to know me, and then they're like, oh wow, like you've actually been through a lot and you are.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that also like trying to share aspects of myself and be more vulnerable and say like, hey, I have been through these things. Like I actually do suffer from anxiety and depression. Like I actually do like literally I've been told like over the last 6 months probably a few times from different people that they think like they're like, you, I think you're on the you have a little bit of the tism, like you're on the scale. And I'm like,
I've got that too.
what do you mean? Like, what are my symptoms? You know what I mean? And it's like the more healing I do, I feel like the more labels I like unpack and
Yeah.
uncover about myself. But at the same time, I'm like, none of those labels actually define me, because I feel like it's like I kind of, you know, like understand why I have all of them or what they mean to me type thing. And so
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, all right, like this isn't a bad thing. Like I actually am just like super in tune with energy and like people around me. And now that I know that about myself too, it's like I can work with my own energy. So it's like I know when I'm picking up a lot of other people's energy, because I start to feel like overwhelmed and, you know, I'm like, ah, type thing. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't even your energy. Like you need to go ground yourself. You need to go release energy, and just teaching people about that too, like spiritual hygiene. It's like we hear so much like go brush your teeth and make sure you're eating, but it's like nobody's telling you to, you know, make sure you take a salt bath once a week and you're clearing your energy. And you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so I think that, you know, those things are important, that we're just kind of having open conversation and, you know, kind of sharing truth with each other, not just like all the bells and whistles of like, this is my perfect package of, you know, what a perfect day looks like for me. And it's like, no, I don't always have perfect days. Like I actually have struggling days, you know what I mean? But I choose to really try to make the best of each day, or to, you know, choose to go in my toolbox and like you said, like pick myself up out. So I'm not using, like, I'm not staying in that energy anymore, where before it was something that was, you know, more overwhelming. It was harder for me to take myself out of that because I was, you know, listening to a lot of people and I didn't have healthy boundaries and I didn't know myself and I didn't value myself, although, you know what I mean? And it's like, even
Yep.
though I thought I did those things, like, even though I thought I loved myself and all those things, when I really like sat with myself, I'm like, no, you don't. Like, no, you really don't, you know? And so I
Yeah.
had to really like, you know, move through that. And I think that that's what we all do, right? That journey back home, that journey back to self, of like rediscovering who we are and what we really want to do. And, you know, without somebody saying, like, hey, you have to have this 9 to 5 or you have to make money in this specific way. It's like now we're kind of like, well, we can make money in all different ways. Like people can literally crochet on TikTok and make millions of dollars off crocheting. Like, and so it's just like we're in a different age. And I think just seeing and helping people like shift through mindsets, because you're shifting and opening yours too. You're like you said,
Yep.
you want to be on the top of the mountain going, or like through the tunnel, like, hey, I figured something out. I want to share it with
Yep.
you, you know?
Yep. Exactly. That's what you want to do for sure. At least me, I
Yeah.
get that feeling, I hear somebody who's going through, a traumatic situation, just like, I participate in my local Toastmasters group. to help improve my speaking for this, right?
Mhm.
And they just learned about my platform and how I talk about trauma and all of that. I had two people come up to me, and I ended up sticking around for another hour because here I am just wanting to help them. I'm like, no, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about this right now. And here's what
Mhm.
I know. Here's the tools that I have. And,
Mhm.
check out my platform. And I know other coaches. And no, we're going to get through this together. And
Mhm.
it is something that you just feel when you've gone to the other side. You're like, you want to share it. You want to share it. And if you can make money doing it too, even better.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think too, like just for me being an Aquarius, I have that like humanitarian spirit, but knowing, I know we touched a little bit on astrology and things like that, and
Yeah.
knowing that, we're basically anyone that's alive right now has really like chosen to be a part of like the biggest shift in energy of that, we've ever seen. And so we hear a lot of people talk about like the age of Aquarius and like new earth and like different things, and I think that can get like really confusing for people. But
Yes.
the thing that I like to help people, or the thing that helps me like understand things, is that for a really long time, like the last era that we was in was a Piscean energy. And so Pisces is all about like the two fish that are swimming against each other, and that duality, that subconscious mind. So over that era, there was a lot of like division, a lot of separation. So we see that in a lot of different ways, whether it's, through money, through race, through politics. And with the age of Aquarian, it's like this understanding as you start to journey back home, that like, wow, like my story is relatable to your story. And we're all kind of interconnected. We're all, one. And that's why with my community I really emphasize that unity, because we are one race. We're the human race. We're all the same. We're all cut from like the same cloth. And so teaching people and remembering that we are all one. In that age of Aquarian is all about community and that oneness, and kind of like that golden rule of like, I'm going to treat people the way that I want people to treat me. And it's really like that simple. And so helping people transition from kind of the old way that we did things that clearly isn't working. We're starting to realize like, what, we do need community. And I know we
Yeah.
kind of joked around during the pre-interview, and I'm completely serious when I say this, but I always joke around with people about front lawns, and how so many people have a front lawn that just like sits there and it's pretty, and it's like, don't go on my front lawn. But what if, like, especially in neighborhoods, we all like chose something to grow, and we work together as a community, where like, okay, she's the tomato lady, she's the lettuce, he's the lettuce man,
Yeah.
and we just share it, instead of like thinking to myself, I have to grow a whole garden, which feels overwhelming, especially if
Right.
you've never gardened before. But if I only have to grow one thing that I'm actually really good at, and I can share with the people around me, then like, why not, do that?
Yeah.
And so I think that like just shifting that way of thinking from what we used to do to what we could do is like where I like to live too, because I'm just like, well, what about this, like, what about this possibility, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so I love connecting with other people that are like-minded, because I think that we can really come up with like different things. And so finding a platform for me that I could do like the teaching and the energy work and all that kind of stuff, but also build a community, was really important to me, because that was that's the vision that I see for my soul shifter revolution. It's like, not only do I want to help teach and raise the consciousness, but I also want to work together to like change laws and to really change the way that we do things. And I think we can do that if we work together, versus me saying like, I'm going to do it all alone. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
no, I want to call in my tribe, and I want to work all together. And so that's what I really focus my soul shifter revolution really focuses on. And also too, like when I started my journey, I was very, very serious about like energy work, and like I saw a shaman, and I definitely invested money in doing the work, because I knew like the impact and how beneficial it was. But throughout my divorce, and throughout like the financial problems that I was having, I didn't have the funds to be able to afford those people anymore, and they all just kind of like left me in the dust. And so that was another piece to my community. It was like, okay, I want to make my community $5 a month so anyone can like really have access. The money
Mhm.
will not be an issue, but I want to like jam pack it with value because I really do want to help people, and I really want to like give people, like you said, um that jump right from
Mhm.
A to B in order to get to where they need to be. And so that is kind of why I birthed the Soul Shifter Revolution community, and what I see for that community and like the vision I have for it, because I do think that we are stronger together, and if we come together we can make real change.
Oh, absolutely. And I love your community, garden idea, and bringing everybody together and everybody just kind of help and feed each other. I love that idea. And one of my dreams actually is to get, I don't know, 20, 30 acres out in the country and, you know, have a build a house for my kids when they're adults and they get to have their family right there, and we'll have a big garden with everybody, and same with friends, they can have a house on this land as long as everybody just pitches in on the property, and we can have our own livestock and all of that. That's my ultimate dream. That's my retirement. That's where I'm trying to get to as well. Will I get there? I'm crossing my fingers if it's in
Well,
the cards for me.
I think that you are going to get there because almost
Yeah.
every single like spiritual person that I talk to that is really in tune, I feel like we all either have that vision or a vision to like open up a wellness center and
Yeah.
something that's like that whole body wellness or something that's more holistic. And so I feel like, we have those deep dreams because that I've literally been saying the same thing for years of like, this is what my vision is, you know what I mean? And I think it's too what we just talked about of like that building community, right? So like not only am I building community with the people that I love, which is like our traditional family, right? Like our husband, wife, children, but I also want to bring in my soul family, like you said, the people
Yeah.
that want to come in and pitch in and also bring that sense of peace too, right? Because it's like we don't want anyone on the island that's going to
Right.
disrupt the island, right? So we're like, no.
Exactly.
And I think that that's part of the journey too of like really learning like who is part of your soul family, who is part of your journey, because I think a lot of times we want to take everyone with us, and I think one of the first things we have to learn is like we cannot take everyone with us to the next chapter, you know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean?
Right.
And so that's definitely like a hard part for I think a lot of us is like, what do you mean? Like I could just take everybody. Like no,
Right.
no, you
No,
can't.
no, no, no. That's what got us in the messes that we get into.
Yes. Yes.
Is wanting to be everything for everybody.
And not putting that energy into ourselves too, right? Because it's like usually
Exactly.
we're the last on the list. And I
Yep.
think that when you start to switch too, it's like you meet well certain people that took advantage of that, right? I think they're the first people to speak up and like, oh my gosh, you're being so selfish now.
Oh yeah.
And so they really want you to like feel bad about doing that, but I feel like once you really step into it, you're like, wow, like not only do I feel amazing, but I actually have like so much more to give to other people now that I'm like actually starting with myself, and like I'm coming from a place of overflow instead of like a place of feeling drained and like out of
Mhm.
obligation. You know what I mean? And so you can kind of pour where you want to also, which I think is such a beautiful thing. And it's like one thing that I really try to teach people and like yell at people right about, because I'm like, no, like you are worth it. Like please choose yourself first. Like
Yeah.
everything else will fall in line. Like I promise you, and I think just helping people shift that perspective and shift, and I think like you said, just doing the things like for ourselves, I think helps people like you living that life right is going to help the people around you go, wow, like I really want to build a community like that. Like I never thought about building my kids on homes on land and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think like too, that's the beautiful part too of like, I think for such a long time I always wanted to like save the collective, but I think
Oh
for a long time I forgot to save myself. So I would like
yeah.
say things to people, and I feel like my guides would be like, that's for you too. Like, are you doing that? You know what I mean? You're
Right.
telling people the right things, but like, are you doing it? And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, I do need to put myself first. I do need to do those
Mhm.
things for myself. And I think part of that, reconnecting with your body too, is moving a lot of things out of your body. So, like, really having some type of like somatic practice, whether it's yoga or breath work or dancing or whatever it is, where you're like really allowing yourself to purge that energy out too, I think is so important, and like a piece that a lot of people miss sometimes too, because they're so focused on like one area, and you really do have to have like that full body approach like we talked about. And so I just think it's like so cool and like my jam, and like I love, like, like I love living here, so I'm like, let me help you guys, I just want to like share and help other people because I'm like, this is so much fun, and like I can see the transformation within myself. And so I
Oh
just
yeah.
want meet people. I feel like I always see people's like full potential too. So I'm like, hey, let me help you. Like, yeah, I can definitely like see you working some magic over here. You know what I mean? And I think we all need someone in our corner like that. You know what I mean? Of like,
Oh yeah.
you're onto something. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it is. It's such a great feeling that you get when everything does start to kind of fall into place. You start working on yourself, and it starts falling into place, and you get to start seeing that. And especially when you start letting go of those people that have those energies that are not in alignment with you and where you're going, or that are just there to use and abuse you. You let those go, and everything is going to change for you. It really
mhm,
is. And I'm a perfect example. I had to cut off my entire adopted family, so I have zero family. I had to cut them all off,
mhm,
and I had to go create my own family in order to make life work for me.
mhm.
Or I was going to end up, where I was headed, was a very, very bad place with those people attached to me. And now, I retired at 44 years old so that I can
Ooh,
do this.
I love
You know,
that. Hmm.
Before, there was no way. I was getting, every other week I was getting some sort of utility shut off, and damn near every other day somebody calling who wants to repossess my car, or something.
Hmm.
And so going from that, cutting those people out of my life because they were energy vampires, is what I called them. That's what they
Hmm.
were. They were sucking the life out of me, and let them go. And then all of a sudden everything just started to build from there. And
It,
then, retired at 44 so I could do this. And so that is the power of getting rid of the wrong energy in your life.
mhm.
That's how drastic your life can change. And that didn't take very long. That took 15, 17 years, for me to do that. And so
Yeah.
it's amazing what you can accomplish when you get rid of the wrong people in your life and you start filling it with the right people who believe in you. You start
Hmm.
believing in yourself, and you start taking those steps. That's where I'm saying you start living in your purpose, everything starts to fall into place.
Hmm.
Yes, things are going to happen, but you're going to know how to deal with it. And it ain't going to affect you like it did before. Trust
Hmm.
me, the personal experience here. There's a lot of truth to a lot of what you teach.
And I think too, when we think about like, I think you said it without saying it, and it's what I heard. So I'm going to reiterate
Yeah.
because I think that too, when we're healing, it's like a twofold process, right? So it's like, yes, we are looking at like said experience or person and kind of saying like, okay, yes, they're mistreating me, so I am going to put up that healthy boundary. I am going to step back. But then when you peel it back a little bit further, you realize like everyone is a reflection of something within me. So then I started asking myself, well, are you disrespecting yourself? Like, how are you talking to yourself? Like, and I think that's the second piece too, is like not only looking at what's outside of us, but looking at how that reflects back to us too, and what that's trying to show us or teach us. Because I think too, like how you talked about, the body communicating after like kind of screaming at you in other ways of like trying to get your attention. Finally the body's like, fine, I'll just get sick and then you'll have to pay attention, you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
I think it's the same way with people too, right? It's like I think when we carry certain wounds, we're like, no, like I don't feel like abandonment anymore, or I'm not afraid of rejection, and then all of a sudden it's presented to us, through people or through situations, and then we feel triggered, and then it's like, oh, like I do feel that, you know what I mean? And so like
Yep.
I think it's cool too. Like I always like did things in like a two part. So I would always like zoom in and be like, okay, what's like this immediate like trying to show me and teach me? And then
Uh-huh.
also like what is it trying to show me and teach me about myself? Or like, you know
Yep.
what I mean? And I think that that's where like the magic really happens, because once you have that awareness, it's like, then like you said, it's like things don't bother you anymore, because you were holding on to something that you didn't realize you were, and it was like dragging you down. And it's like the minute you have awareness, you're like, oh, I'm not going to move like that anymore. Like now, like now I'm pulling out that wisdom and I'm just like not bothered
Yep.
by it anymore. And I think that that's like the beautiful part about healing, and also having that like deep relationship with self, because now you're, you know, people for a long time were trying to make me feel like, I was a loser or I was stupid because of like my finances. And it's like, well, why don't you just go back to teaching? Like, you'd rather suffer than, and it, for me, it just, wasn't that easy. There were a lot of factors that blocked me, one, from going back from teaching, but two, it was like, I always knew that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was like, but then I had to really look at myself and be like, okay, like, are you feeling like a loser because of your financial situation? And like, do those things really define you? Or, are those things like part of your character? Or is that really what success is? Or is success like having a grounded nervous system? Is success like feeling peaceful? And so I really started to question too, like, what even is success? What does that even look like? And so, yeah, some people might think like, oh, she's broke, right? Because of my bank account, or, but then I was like, you know what? I'm rich. Like I feel rich inside. And so
Yep.
then it was like that total switch too of like, well, if I feel rich inside, then obviously the money's going to be coming too. So
Oh yeah.
it was like that
Yep.
whole like, full cycle type thing. And so I just think it's so important that we kind of like loosen up about life too, and like realize that, everything is kind of happening for us and not to us. And
Mhm.
really, I think it will like soften the blows a little bit of like what's going on, because we kind of realize like, okay, like things are just kind of happening to help us like move and to shift and to expand. So I'm not going to be so hard on myself. Like I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to
Yep.
allow myself to like fall down and hit rock bottom and not judge myself, right? Because of it, And so I think that that's, where the beauty comes in, and where the community, and like you said, just realizing that like we all go through shit, and it's like relatable, it's okay that we're not okay all the time, you know what I mean? And
Oh
it's
yeah.
okay to say that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to have it all figured out all the time.
mhm,
But as long as you keep, you stay focused on the things that you want, and you stay focused on that positive energy, and you keep things, focused on yourself. That doesn't mean to be, not meaning selfishly, not being
mhm,
a selfish person, but working towards the things that you want in your life, and not necessarily for everybody else. It does, it starts to just kind of come together.
mhm,
And then the money and the finances, they kind of work themselves out
mhm.
in the process of all of that. It happens,
Yep.
and
You
you
realize
just,
that like money is just like a frequency, right? So usually
yeah.
it's that tied to that like low self-worth. And then the
Hmm.
minute you're like, you know what, I'm worth it. Like I'm worth the money. Like I'm worth, it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, the money's coming in. Like, you know what I mean? Everything just shifted out of nowhere. You're like, how did that happen? I've been trying so hard, right? Because it's like we've
Yeah.
been taught to do, to perform, to earn in order to receive. And I think we're learning like, no, you just have to be, like you just have to be your in your essence. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's when we can attract things really easily, because it's like, oh, like I just recognize that, or like I just recognize like that opportunity, or that, you know what I mean? And so it's so much easier. And I think we have to go through that journey though, right? In order to kind of embody the things, right? Those sayings that we always hear. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
until we actually go through it and embody it, then we're like, oh, that's what they mean by that. Like, oh, that's what they, you know what I mean? And
You have to be
so,
prepared when those opportunities present themselves. You
mhm,
have to be prepared to act energetically and, even financially, or, whatever. You have to be ready to act when the
mhm,
opportunities present themselves. You'd be
exactly.
surprised how many opportunities we actually end up passing up because we're not prepared,
Hmm.
and so that's really what it's about. And so the keep yourself energetically prepared, keep ready for the opportunities and the good things to happen, and when they do present themselves, jump on them. And
Hmm.
that's really how it is. It's not about luck. It's not about, being smarter or braver or anything else. It's just about being prepared.
Hmm. I love that phrase. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And
Yeah.
I think that that's like definitely what you're saying. It's like if we,
Yeah.
wake up every day like, okay, today's my big day, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's like when that big day comes, you will be prepared and you're not going to feel like you said that, like you're not ready because it's like you've been preparing for it, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes too, like that's the whole part, right, of us going through the journey too. It's like we know that we're meant for something big or that we're supposed to be doing something, but it feels really scary too. So it's like
Mhm.
the journey is actually preparing us and getting us ready for, it's like I taught kindergarten for 11 years. So that helped me, right? Like reconnect to my childlike self. That helped me learn how to teach, right? And now I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm still a teacher, but like I'm teaching in a different way. I'm teaching on a different level. Like, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
so I'm like, this was preparation, you know what I mean? And so even though it was like I was moved out of that, I was like, okay, this is why, this was happening or this was an important part of my journey. So I just think it's so cool too, as you start to like zoom out, you start to really realize like, wow, this is why everything happened. Like it all really did happen for a reason.
Yep.
And even the painful stuff, we
Oh yeah.
realize like, oh, that was actually a big part of it. You know what I mean? And that's helped me in this way, or that helps me in that way. And so it's just like beautiful. I think healing is just so beautiful to watch. And that was like the most enjoyable part of kindergarten was like them coming in being like, like little babies. And then like by the end they're reading and they're doing all the things and they're just like watching the growth. And I feel like
Cool.
that's what I get excited with my clients because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like I remember when you were like sad girl and now you're like empowered girl, and I'm like, this is beautiful. So I
That's
love
cool.
to like watch the transformation. It's so beautiful to see. So I love that. And I feel like you're the same way with like the people that you work with and like how you guide them and stuff too. It's just like such a beautiful, like, you know,
Oh
experience.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And we end up getting so much energy off of it. It's almost like a
Mhm.
high of
Yes.
some, and it's better than any other drug or alcohol that I've ever had before. And trust me, I've had my fair share. I've had my issues, and it's a very different kind of high. And you seek that out more and
Hmm.
more the more you do this and the more you help people kind of get to that point. You seek it out more because it's a high of some sort, and then we
Hmm.
just get that reward from it.
I think that's how you know, right? That you're like
Yeah.
doing the right thing. You're in alignment. You're like, oh, like I always say that. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
I feel so high right now, and people are always
Yes.
like, what? And I'm like, no, seriously, like I just helped someone. Like I feel so good.
Oh, exactly. That's what it is. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
I love that.
Oh goodness, I can talk to you all day. We got such a good connection, and if you ever want to be on the show again, absolutely we can do some more episodes for sure. But yeah, we're at our hour here already. It went so fast.
I know. Well, that's how it is
Um,
when we talk. I feel like.
so Nikki, I'm gonna have all of your info in the descriptions for the viewers and the listeners to be able to find you. But real quick, do you want to go ahead and tell them, in case they're driving, where they can find you online? Real quick before we sign out.
Sure. I am on Instagram and TikTok at the Soul Shifter. I'm also on YouTube at the_Soul Shifter, where I offer card readings and things like that. And then you can find all of like my healing resources, journals, tools through my website, soulshifterrevolution.com.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here today, being a guest. You brought a lot of really great insight, and I think the viewers are going to get, so much from this and so much from you. And, if you're going through your healing journey, absolutely reach out to Nikki, the soul shifter. She will get you going in the right direction for sure. For
Thank you
sure.
so much. It was an honor to be on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. And next time, I'll see y'all next time. And until then, just keep on keeping on. It's you're gonna get there. It's gonna get better. Love you all.